Hello.
Hello, hello. Today's episode is called How to Fix Your Codebase.
Mine?
Your codebase. Also, we should probably add the second episode, the second season to this theme and call it How to Fix Your Internet Connection because we've all been having some internet connection issues lately. Um, we're gonna do it no matter what. There might be some jitter, some overheating, some weirdly misbehaving cameras today, but we'll do our best. With
I
us today
fixed
is
it. I fixed it by restarting the browser.
okay, that's good
It
to
was a
hear.
browser issue, actually.
With us today is Maria. Maria, is it correct of me to pronounce your surname as Zulfikar? Did I catch that for the most part? You're muted, Maria. In case you're doing some changes, we can't hear you right now. There we go. Maria, hello. Can you hear us? We can hear you breathing. So there's hello.
I just turned off my cam just to be. I had some weird internet connectivity issues, so maybe the
I see.
audio is audio good?
Audio
Audio
is
is
Hello.
good.
good. I'm worried there might be some delay, which might make the conversation a little bit more challenging today, but we'll
Okay,
deal
hold
with it.
on.
Raul is with us today. Raul, hello. Raul is asking Adrian, was the cookies or biscuits issue? It's a Chrome issue.
That's good. That's a very good question.
Are you using Chrome,
I
Adrian?
like both. I have to say, I like both types of problems in that case. I like them too often. That's for sure as well. And in this case, I'm thinking it's more a biscuit type of problem.
Mm.
Yeah, because biscuits are more mean than cookies. Yeah,
All these little snackable issues.
that's a snackable issue, right? I can talk about snackable stuff. Okay, hello everyone. So, um, there
Maria,
is.
Maria, you've been on quite a, if I may say so, podcast tour
Yes.
lately. You've interviewed quite a few prominent thought leaders, if I may say so, in our industry. Could you give us a quick
Ye-
brief on what you've been up to?
Yes. Yes, Dennis. I started off from Robert C. Martin. I works on clean
Mm-hmm.
code in my free time, and in there I learned some new things and some and let's do some practical and just share it with others on the LinkedIn. So when I shared it on the LinkedIn, people start fighting with me. Literally, they start arguing with me that this is not true. This is not true. For example, parameters. People started fighting on my posts. So I thought that I will reach Uncle Bob and I'll ask him what's going on. Like what you're saying is right. Why I have experienced it. What you're saying is right. I've experienced, but people are not ready to hear your perspective. So I reached him via his email address, and luckily he answered me. So I told him my questions in my mind. So I have few questions that he can answer me. So he was ready to come and talk with me. So I thought, why not to record it for others? If I'm asking some questions that my connections are more interesting in, the people are fighting over it. So let's ask him. So he luckily he came to my session, and that was my first ever podcast. I was not, kind of podcast girl or something before. So I asked him my questions, and I have recorded them, and I shared with my community that if he's saying whatever he's saying, that I agree, and I will show you as well. And for this session as well, I have prepared some examples as well.
Mm-hmm.
So why long? For example, why the long parameters are bad smell? How can you reduce the smells in your code? So I have prepared some examples.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first ever podcast with Mr. Bob. And then the change started. I had a postcard with so many different people, but my most recent was with Mr. Kent Beck,
Mm-hmm.
because few of my connections just started suggesting me why you should, why not going for the podcast with Ken Beck, and we have some question. And I literally didn't know Mr. Ken Beck before I didn't know him before. So I searched him on LinkedIn, and I start talking with him, and I told him that okay, I have read about this and this and this, and my connections have few questions, and I also have some questions about, for example, agile, about TDD. And luckily he agreed on my podcast, and that was another big podcast for me, and I really feel grateful for that.
I
That
think you can have, work
there
guests in the
was
very first time.
these guys are tech leaders of the industry, and they are really amazing.
Hold on. Give it a moment to synchronize back
Yes.
up. There we go. We got a little bit of delay, but we'll
Yes,
work with it.
Adrian. Yes, Adrian. Am I hearable? Can you hear me?
We just had
Yeah,
a
it's
little bit of a freeze. We just had a little bit of a freeze. We can hear you. We can hear you well for the most part. Yeah. I'm just gonna link your YouTube channel, and it's called Programming with Maria, and it has. I'm dropping it in chat right now
All right.
for our live viewers. It's really interesting. You had Uncle Bob on, you had Kent Beck on, you had some of our
Thank
guests
you.
on that we had on the show. Um, and it's really, it's really humbling to see that you can come on stage, ask, most other industries are, let's say,
Yes.
so most other industries are so old that their curriculum ranges back decades or centuries into the past.
Thank you.
Mathematics, physics, and quite a few quite a few thought leaders in other industries have passed. And engineering, software engineering, as it is a little bit chaotic, and we still have computer science, which
oh,
is
like,
a
oh,
sort of a long-standing
it's not
foundation
chaotic
for
at
it.
all.
But it's interesting that most of the thought leaders, the most of the people who have signed the Agile Manifesto, they're still alive, they're still around, and you can ask them questions. These are not like age-long old heroes who have sort of passed away centuries ago, but you can actually you can actually go and talk and reach out to the people who have
Yes.
started these movements
Yes.
and ideas and ask them a
Exactly.
question, and it's so amazing to
Exactly.
see you just record that, share it with us, and that's very inspiring. I think that's just the accessibility and ease of access to the thought leaders is quite refreshing.
Exactly, Dennis. They are so easy to access. Literally, what they want is do your homework before meeting
Mm.
them, before going to them. If you are hardworking and you have done your homework, they are welcoming you. And for Ken Beck, Mr. Ken Beck, he told me that since I did my homework before talking to him, so he's always available for me. He told me that he's always welcoming for me whenever I have something to ask, to share, to learn from him. He's always welcoming me. He told me that he likes the people who do their homework. Like
Mm.
it's very easy to approach them, but if you ask silly questions from them and basic questions or silly questions and basic questions or silly questions that really don't like it. So do your homework, and they are welcoming them.
What does doing your homework entail? Like, for example, what was doing your homework for Uncle Bob? For those of our viewers who are, let's say,
Yes, Uncle
unfamiliar with
Bob
clean
is
code and
famous
clean
for,
architecture.
yes. For Kent Back, since he's the first signer of Agile Manifesto, and also he's most popular for JUnit and TDD working style, test-driven development. So, since I told you that I literally didn't know about Kent Beck before, back before, unless and until my connection starting messaging me, who is he, what are his major achievements.
Maria, you muted yourself. I don't know if that was by accident or if we're having deeper connection issues.
It's becoming worse, I have the feeling.
Is it becoming worse?
For me, it's yes.
Yeah. So there is a contingency that we might have to split this episode into the intro part, which you just did, and maybe follow up on some other date with Maria when her internet connection is better.
I think it makes sense because so far it's very interesting, but I only get 50% of the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's the persistence is nice, but it might be we just lost Maria. The persistence is nice, but I think it's below a level of, let's say, listening standard where it might just be too difficult to follow along. Even though the discussion is very interesting, and I'm sad if we have to postpone it longer. I believe you're typing to Maria to check.
I'm typing in our group chat on LinkedIn.
Okay. And she's back. Yeah, Gary says is quite frustrating. Yeah, so I mean it's nice to persist. It's nice to be stubborn about it a little bit, but there is I'm aware that there's a certain threshold where it's just too invasive to follow along with the ideas.
Yeah, I'm let's say I had that on my very first stream. I had that as well. That my internet connection was broke, and since then I have 2 smartphones with 2 different 5G connections. I have my normal DSL thing, and I have a in my car. I always have a Starlink dish. So I am ready for it.
That's extreme.
No, it's not. It's just no, it's not. It's not extreme. It is not extreme. It is.
Isn't Starlink too high latency for streaming?
Starlink. I never streamed with. I can test next time streaming from my garden, and then we take a look.
Nice. Maria, are you with us? Maria, I'm gonna put you on stage. Hello, welcome back. You're still muted, so you have to unmute yourself. Gary says he relies on Starlink. Oh,
Starlink is great. Not during a weather storm, but it's great in general. It's fun. So I need to make an episode about that, I think. Many people ask me already because I take that on vacation as well. That's quite interesting.
You have a screenshot of you and your Starlink somewhere in one of your blogs, one of your articles.
Yeah, right. I want to. People ask me.
Yeah. It's visible somewhere. Maria, can you hear us? Maria, are you still with us? In case you can't reply, Adrian did suggest and wrote to you in group chat to move our session to some other date. And we're having a little bit of a Starlink discussion now. Miva Savina is asking, what is the topic, please? I'm a little bit late. The topic for today is how to fix a code base. Maria was going to tell us about her journey interviewing prominent thought leaders like Kent Beck, Uncle Bob, etc. And then have a few code example for us regarding refactorings, regarding clean code, regarding her thought process about how to clean up, or in the way that we said in the title, to fix, or perhaps make the code base less rude. Some practical approaches on how to make non-invasive changes to your code base to make it easier to work with or less stressful to work with. That's our topic target for today. I'm afraid we might have to disappoint you, and since it seems we're unable to reach the target just enough to make it screen shareable and in decent audio, and we just lost Maria again. Let's let's say we should remove it. She has a fun topic. Right now she's in a location where there's bad weather, and I think the weather is impacting her. It's also not Maria's fault. There's nothing she could have done to sort of prepare for this obstruction in her internet quality. What would you like to do, Adrian? I know you're unprepared. I'm unprepared to
I can
have
show my
this
Starlink app.
Sure, Starlink. No, but let's if we're gonna continue, let's stay on topic.
Yeah.
Let's keep it about clean code, clean architecture, and Uncle Bob had a new book recently about clean agile. You and I, a few weeks ago, reacted to a YouTube video of Primeagen interviewing Uncle Bob. I think it is the most recent, most up-to-date, honest interview of Uncle Bob that was done by somebody who was in the industry, with somebody who can sort of see past the tongue-in-cheek wordplay that Uncle Bob likes to do on stage, because he's quite assertive, which is why a lot of people don't like him. He has that sort of military-style drill sergeant way of saying you have to do this or you are wrong, right? So it is prominently his way of phrasing things that that gets people sort of divided at least on the social networks, at least on LinkedIn and on Twitter. But I see it happening on Reddit as well, and on Reddit and on Hacker News, and I can tell Reddit and Hacker News are very much anti clean code for the most part. Like the most flaming.
Why? What is the core reason? Well, what is the audience here in the channel right now thinking about why clean code might be not the best choice, or are you think it is? And what is your opinion about clean code itself?
Yeah.
So I'm not using clean code in my content, to be honest, because clean code sounds strange, no, but clean code is not really present for me. This is one of the topics which isn't that strongly present, since I'm a believer in writing clean and easy to read code, maintainable, all this kind of stuff. The books of Robert C. Martins are not too much on my, let's say, agenda. So I read the first one.
Me neither.
I'm more into the idea of continuous delivery, TDD, those kind of things. And clean code was already back then so abstract for me. It was never, maybe because I'm started 20 years ago as a PHP guy, and it was PHP and clean code was. No, it's simply not a good fit, right? So this is maybe the reason. So I'm not the best person to do a philosophical conversation about clean coding, but I think you are, because you have read the book on the book club, isn't it?
No, not yet. No. We've read Tidy First, which is Kent Beck's book. And we had Kent Beck on, right? So I was inspired by Maria, actually, to reach out to Kent, because I saw how approachable these thought leaders are. And
You have.
Sorry?
You have invited
Kent Beck. We have Kent. We had Kent Beck on one of our book club sessions. The book club is on pause right now because I'm a bit of a logistic mess right now with kindergarten during summer, and I still haven't figured it out. So I've been a bad host lately when it comes to the book club, and I'm very sorry. It's Kent Beck gave us similar feedback as Maria mentioned. He said he was very grateful. They are very well prepared. It was the most popular book that we read in the book club. Everybody devoured it, like analyzing every chapter, really understanding the key chapters, taking away a lot, having like a clear intention how they want to apply it. And there were a few things they were confused about, and then we brought that up to Kent, and it was the more complex ideas that were a little bit confusing. And Kent gave us, he was very appreciative that, he said that it's a very well read and very well prepared audience. He really appreciates that we've sort of gone through the book so thoroughly, because it is a little bit of a pragmatic book club. Like I focus on, if you don't have time, read one chapter, one page, as long as you do it consistently, right? So reading books bit by bit consistently is more important than trying to read it perfectly and then you never get anywhere, right? So the book club has a little bit of anti-procrastination attitude to it, which means that some of the books some readers don't finish. They just take what's valuable from it. based on the conversations we have with the other book club members. Regarding the clean code, so you asked me, why is clean code not popular on social media? I don't know. I can tell you that I have met similar experiences, and Adrian, I think you as well, when we started talking about continuous delivery, trunk-based development, factoring, TDD, typical such example. But even if you go a little bit more niche, like database refactoring, database architecture, ORMs, you get that same kind of sort of very dividing, very flaming, very trollish, I wouldn't say aggressive, but a little bit more of, no, that's, it sparks very much passionate debates, right? So the people who go on there are usually contrarians of such ideas, and it seems to be a very popular point to disagree over, and have flame wars on Reddit and similar platforms. But I see that happening on LinkedIn as well. Even on my post, I've sparked such flame wars accidentally, and then got stuck in them because I passionately wanted to just drive a point home, and was wasting my time with that. I see you're still talking to Maria. Are we trying to salvage the situation? Is there anything we can do and hope or contribute towards Maria's connection being more I'm reading the private chat. Yes, so did Maria respond in LinkedIn? No. Okay. Maria, can you just give us a signal somewhere in LinkedIn chat or somewhere in the private chat here in StreamYard in the sidebar? We are strongly suggesting that we move your episode, your topic, and we sort of take over and waffle on for the next 30 minutes. Because I have a suggestion. If you're okay with it, we have somebody in chat said Gary Bernay or Gary Barnett. Please tell me if I butchered your name. I'm very sorry.
Barnett, I think.
Gary says, is there a group community I can follow? I'd love to chip in on these topics. He also says, I am writing about Waterfall versus Agile 2, I think the next couple of weeks. Gary, if you're up for it, we'd be open to you joining us now, live on stage, if you're up for it. This is something we do. We call it Hot Join. And since we're one speaker short, we have a vacancy in our clean agile topics. So as long as we're on theme and respectful, we can structure it.
On theme. Hey, where
on
have you learned that?
Yeah, I know. Your book recommendation was very much welcome. That advice of know your territory, stay on topic.
Which book? Which book?
The book is called. It's by Stephen Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
And where did I have it?
We need to get Stephen Pressfield on the show. This is
Pressfield.
Yeah, we need to.
It's Barnett. See, you said net. I'm just gonna pronounce it. Yeah, Barnett. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's give Gary Gary, I'm gonna connect with you on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna send you the studio link.
I will do. I have him already.
Oh, you have him already. Okay.
You can do connect anyway, so it's not. No, I am not connected as well. Eh? I don't know. Ah, but never mind. I thought we were.
Just gonna read out. We had a caller in regards to clean code. There are really dogmatic debates. Yeah, it is a bit dogmatic, right? So this sort of more craft, and I know you don't like this, Adrian. Sort of this mastering your craft and craftsmanship topics. There is this romanticized idea
there is craftsmanship in our profession. The point is that we shouldn't embrace the craftsmanship as the non plus ultra. Mm-hmm. This is what we shouldn't do.
I think the reason why clean code got popular is we have Gary.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hello.
This was very impromptu. I'm very sorry if you're disturbing your inner peace with putting your life on stream. So we're just talking about, in case you missed it, I would recommend you turn off, if you're watching on LinkedIn, I would recommend you turn off the other stream just in case, because it can cause issues.
Yeah, got that now. Notice there was a delay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Well, this is a miracle because I normally have to plug in a USB mic because none of these apps recognize my microphone. So hello, and thank you for taking such a gamble, inviting a total stranger onto your stream.
And you are connected with Starlink, so it's all on theme, I think.
No, yeah, totally. I mean, do you want me to give you the 10-second resume of why I'm interested in this?
Yeah.
In my last full-time CTO role, I took on a really broken code base, a fairly broken team, and I spent 2 years combining making the team happy, but also making the code happy. And I ended up with a sort of a bunch of very hard-learned lessons around this. And the reason, to give you some very quick background, the reason I'm interested in writing about waterfall versus Agile 2 is, you probably can't tell, but I'm old enough to have done my first programming in COBOL on mainframes in the era of James Martin's information engineering. So, the pre-Agile methodologies. And I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter which methodology you use, provided you do it properly. In that you can be successful with waterfall if you do it properly. You can be successful with Agile if you do it properly. And by properly, I don't mean quotes by the book. I mean sensitively, and I'm sure you've all experienced this. The newly minted black belt Scrum Master comes along, and immediately your project grinds to a halt because we're doing all of these rituals.
Because it's rigid. It's too dogmatic.
It's rigid.
Right? We had
it's a choreography. Yeah.
And I think one of the dangers we all face is this sort of ideology trumping common sense.
Could you expand on that? Like, do I understand you correctly that people say, "Oh, you should do X because it's common sense"? Like,
you guys were alluding to it earlier with the fact that it's almost impossible to have any conversation in this environment without it turning into some kind of flame war. So someone will say, MongoDB is the greatest database on the planet, and I
might have done that in the past.
Indeed, and I would respectfully say MongoDB is the greatest database for certain applications, but it is a really sucky database for other applications. And the problem is, though, it's very difficult to kind of have that nuanced view because someone will say, "Well, dude, are you NoSQL or are you SQL? What's your religion?" And the truth be told, I'll give you an example. The application I rescued last year had been designed by someone who had a pathological fear of SQL, and had written SQL databases don't scale, and had produced a bunch of kind of ideological beliefs about SQL databases that A, weren't true, and B, signified a lack of understanding about why you would use a document-centered database versus a relationally oriented database. Because the truth is, in my experience, 99% of applications could probably survive with one or the other. It doesn't matter, because 99% of applications have relatively simple data models, relatively low performance requirements, and so on. But as soon as you start to scale, you then have, you then hit these points of pain.
Gary, you mentioned you had to fix a code base, fix a team, and then fix a product, and it took you a few years.
18 months.
18 months. Were you hired? Why were you hired? Were you hired to fix, or were you hired because somebody left, or like how come you had to fix it? Right, so usually such projects.
My predecessor left the company abruptly.
that was my I because usually what happens is this happens. The most senior people abruptly leave. Like they just give up.
The silos leave.
The
That's a
silos
typical
leave.
legacy story.
And it makes it extremely difficult to recover a legacy situation. These are my clients predominantly. These
Yeah.
are Adrian's clients predominantly, and
Yeah.
it seems you found yourself in such a situation. So
yeah, I mean, I guess it was a slight catalogue of things, which was it was a very, very, it was a brilliant idea to start with. The core of the app idea was absolutely fantastic, and I think they rushed and rushed and rushed, and I think that the drive for features over design and architecture overwhelmed the project. So
I would like to add something at this point, because this is an extremely interesting point for LinkedIn. This is this be very fast versus be very, let's say, fundamental about things. So think it, have good practices, good foundations, good architectures, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big aspects here is that people, you said that in the beginning, I want to point that out, the understanding. So you can't do either of those correctly if you don't understand them. You can lose yourself in details, and you can be too fast. And this is what most people actually do, because they don't understand what they do. They try to learn on the way, and this is, I think, what you've experienced. You basically saw the result of a learning story.
No, absolutely, but there's another component to this, and I've reflected on this an awful lot in the last few months, which is, I have the benefit of having screwed this up dozens of times before.
yeah.
So when I come to a project, I come with a set of patterns in my head. And a lot of it is purely, it's not because I'm smart. It is just because I like a dog. I've learned by pain association. It's a purely Pavlovian response. But, I know that there is a good model for designing a scalable CRM data model. And I've done it a few times. And I'm not aware that I'm imposing that architectural discipline on the work that I'm doing. And this is one of the slight criticisms I have of people like Kent Beck, is that when Kent Beck is leading a team, you're bringing an awful lot of experience, knowledge, and those pre-built patterns to the work. So when people talk about, agile and extreme programming being very free of dogma, in fact, there's a lot of inbuilt dogma that just comes for free. And if you put that in the hands of someone less experienced than someone like Kent Beck, you don't necessarily get the same beneficial outcome. So, I am very opinionated.
Because he has a huge assumption stack, a lot of experience, like 4 or 5 decades.
No, absolutely. And in addition, unlike me, in his case, he is also smart, but when I look at it, we had an issue with slow performing database queries, and I looked at it and I instinctively knew that there were some relations in there that needed to be indexed. And sure enough, we threw some indexes in, and hey presto, performance improved. And again, that's not because I'm smart. That's just because I've kind of done it a few times.
Yeah, Gary, like you mentioned 18 months. That sounds like a project. How did you know that it stopped? If it's gradual improvement.
I don't think improvement ever stops. And during the course of that 18 months, we had to ship an awful lot of features as well.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I did do a 3-month feature freeze in order to try and get my head around it.
So but after it was that bad. So feature freezes are usually mortal wound.
And we rewrote almost the entire server side of this product. That hurts. Whilst shipping new features, whilst introducing things, and honestly, it was kind of a bin fire. It was all based on AWS infrastructure. There were at least 2 different Amazon accounts involved. everything needed to be everything needed
I
to be
laugh,
fixed.
but we've all experienced this.
No,
At some
absolutely.
point.
And the only other lesson that I would really want to sort of shout about is that none of this required any CTO superpowers, and in fact,
to
most
make
of the
the mess
changes
or to fix it.
to
Like
fix
it.
it.
Hang on. So in order to fix the code base, the culture, you didn't have to, let's
I didn't have
say,
to do any
use
magic.
your CTO level influence, your pseudo capabilities, right? So you were sort of pretty much with the team as a peer rather than.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, it's about sitting down with the team and saying, do you want to carry on working with this infrastructure in this state, or would you be happier if we transform the state of the infrastructure to make it simpler? It's kind of that, do you want to swipe left or right on this idea?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Would you like it if we didn't have to run 3 different make scripts on our personal laptops to get something into deployment, and if all we had to do was press a button on Git and have it
But
deploy it?
from that comment, Gary, I can immediately tell. Adrian, sorry, I'm just gonna take your comment off because we didn't announce Gary, and I would like our audience at least to see Gary's name because the name titles disappear when we're zoomed out. Sorry. Gary, I can tell from that comment alone that you can be very persuasive. Like you've learned your craft, you know how to talk to people, manage people, sort of get on their emotional side to sort of get buy-in.
Real CTO.
The real CTO with leadership, with leadership finesse rather than management.
Well, I spent a few years working with public sector organizations on digital transformation.
Interesting.
And fundamentally, if you want to do digital transformation, what you're doing is you're moving lots of people's cheese. You're asking people to change the way they work, the way they interact with colleagues, the way they collaborate. Yeah. And a very smart person told me years and years ago that herding cats is really easy if you have a dog and some fish.
Interesting. So you don't move.
So when I say,
you
herding
influence
cats,
the environment.
You just have to influence the environment, and most people, in my experience, want to do a great job.
Great metaphor. Thank you.
Well, steal it. I stole it from someone else, so feel free to do it.
Thank you. So to paraphrase it, invitation and influence rather than force and rules.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and again, I think it's safe to make some assumptions. Everyone in my team wanted to be happy in their job. They wanted to feel they were part of something successful. They wanted to feel that they were on a journey, on a mission with some destination. So all I'm doing is I'm selling this vision. And then I sit down with them and go, well, what's the coolest, best, easiest way we can get to that destination? And is doing it the old way going to make us happy, or is improving the way we work going to make us even happier?
Okay,
so you give them that choice.
We have a question on that, actually, if you don't mind me interjecting a little bit of our audience. I don't think you can see the questions on StreamYard. I can't. No. So I will just put them. We have a lot of questions. So if you can just.
We should go through them. Yeah.
10, 15 minutes just to get to the questions. Raul asks, I have a question for you guys. There's a moment when we have a code base where we adopted workarounds as standard solutions. And later fighting technical debt, we realized we should change those approaches. Follow up. How would you guys deal with such a situation? Now,
since we have a guest on, it does make sense to pass this question directly to our new guest.
Direct to Gary.
Okay. Yeah, that's super kind of you. So I think there are a couple of things to say. Every time a CTO or a team lead or an individual developer makes a choice, they are placing some kind of bet.
Yeah.
When I choose to use a certain technology, I am placing some kind of bet.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the kind of technical debt analogy, every time we take a shortcut, we are borrowing on our credit card. When we make you might argue, although you might disagree with me, but if you make a strategic decision to associate with the AWS ecosystem or the GCP ecosystem or the Azure ecosystem, you're making an investment. But that's like a 30-year mortgage. That's on a relatively low interest rate. There's quite a big cost of change, but the risk profile of that debt is significantly lower than the, oh crap, just use that library because it appears to work. Let's stick with that kind of.
Mhm.
And so one thing I always say to people is, every decision you make, you're incurring some debt. So just be clear in your own mind: is it a payday loan, a credit card, a personal loan, or a mortgage that you're getting?
Brilliant. And what are you buying? Are you going out for dinner or for beers, or are you buying an appreciating asset?
Absolutely. And as every finance expert will tell you, you pay off the highest interest rate loans first. You pay off your payday
Deal
loan
with
first.
the worst debt first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you look at a code
That's interesting, Gary. If I may just interject.
Go on.
We usually don't, like in finance. We have this idea of, okay, you have debt. If you talk to a financial advisor, an accountant, a investor, they will always, the first thing out of their mouth will be, what's the interest rate? We don't use that analogy for technical debt. We just say, oh, it's technical debt. How bad is it?
Most people don't know what technical debt really is.
We fail to describe it. Is it like a dumpster fire? Is it neglect? Does it need a little bit of refactoring?
Absolutely, and
it
that's
does
why
have
I
a
think
bus factor of -7, and it'll
Yeah.
take paying 7 people who are no longer with the company just to understand what is going on.
And again, even your response to that technical debt can sometimes be a risk. So, for example, I encountered So I was in an environment where most of the backend was Golang. I encountered some Node, some really well-written Node, written by a contractor to do some Active Directory synchronization. But I have a team of Golang folk. Do I give someone some time to re-implement that in Golang so that we have a straight, clean surface across our backend code, or do I keep it as that little unique microservice? And if we adopt microservices religion, who cares? Every microservice can have its entirely different infrastructure. It's entirely different. Now, personally speaking, I think that's crazy, but
It is.
Orthodox microservices religion would tell you that. So I took the call to say, no, we're going to re-implement this because I can't keep hiring Node skills to fix this.
Just for 5% of the art.
Yeah, and it's not that it was bad code, but I have to balance that against all of those risks around available skills, around, is it still going to be usable, readable, maintainable in 2 years, 3 years time? So I mean, back to the question that the person specifically asked.
Raul asked, so how to deal with a situation where the team has adopted this, sort of they've given up, they've been sort of exhausted, and they've been so long on this treadmill that just doing workaround on workaround on workaround has become their standard. How would you deal? So you as a CTO, you're the CTO of such a team, you're taking over. How would you deal with this situation?
Well, firstly, if I'm taking over, I have like 3 magic months where I'm kind of golden because I'm the new person. So I need to lay some stakes in the ground really early on. So what you do is it's the classic thing. You're sailing your boat. You hear a loud crashing noise. The first thing you do is check the bilges. Is water coming into the boat? Oh crap! There's a load of water in the bottom of the boat. So now you find where the hole is, and at this stage, you just get anything you can and stuff it in the hole. So you deal with the immediate emergency. So are these problems stopping them from releasing the next essential feature for their customers? So let's pause for a second. We can't fix everything at once. We've got customers. Our next round of funding might be contingent on us delivering X and Y and Z, or that big conference we're going to, or that big show we're going to needs this feature. So again, much as I might like to be able to press the magic pause button, I have customers and I have salespeople who are carrying targets and so on. So what are the things I have to do immediately to put the flames out?
So such a team is the flames are caused by the team following the path of least resistance, even though there's like a follow-up pain that comes with it. Leandro asks, how do you deal with breaking the path of least resistance? Because the team will perceive you as, wait, you're taking away the path of least resistance and you're replacing it with standards and discipline, well, why can't we keep the easy stuff?
Well, that's where you have to do the selling, and you know you can sit down with them and say, how much fun is it working on this code base today? What could we do collectively to make this less shitty? And we can't do everything at once. But for example, you know, we're relying. I don't know. Our application creates PDF reports, and the old PDF library that we got for free somewhere won't do beautiful pie charts, and product want beautiful pie charts. You know, so let's think about an architected defensive way to refactor this. Could we perhaps start by building an interface layer between our code and the crappy old PDF library? And could we get to a point where we could potentially then unplug the PDF library? So we're not going to try and
So you're
break.
you're describing the Strangler Fig approach, or this sort of substitutability, like relying on substitutability to establish a contract or a port where it didn't exist before, and then swap it.
And if I'm working with a team on this, I might reflect back to them and say, isn't this probably quite a cool thing to do every time we import a library? You know, look at the benefits we would have had if we'd built a clean interface to this the first time round, and think of how much time and effort we would have saved.
The funny part is when you talk to clients and customers and other company leaders about that, or entire teams, you will see that the very experienced senior developers like this idea. And the very junior people or intermediate developer, they don't like this idea, because the newer persons just see more work. So if you have a ports and adapter pattern everywhere, where you write your adapters and you have your ports and hexagonal, blah, 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 they see more work. And when you have these older persons who went through different stages of their career and seen a lot, they know why you should put this into place. So they already want this. And what you actually need to create, what you always do as a CTO, as a salesman, is to make the others want to have something. So selling is about making the other want, out of intrinsic motivation, to have something. And it is easy to make the people who suffered a lot to want this, but it is hard to a team which never had these problems. They first have those, let's say, this problems first time, to convince them to actually change, to make even more, while they already are maybe overworked with what they do. And this is actually quite heavy.
100%. And the overwhelm is a key factor, like the burnout, or possible overwhelm, just the lethargy that comes with working in such a system for such a long time.
Yeah, and the issue with it is true that the gratification is postponed.
Yes.
So, you know, we went through this really slogging period where minor changes seemed to take forever because we were doing them the properly architected way. But then suddenly, the mood seems to change. And then you have a retro, and then people are saying, well, actually, this phase of development was really easy because we're now reaping the benefits of the work that we've done
Later.
But there is a lag. So, you know, one thing that I would do is I deliberately get new developers to work on some of the crappiest code.
Yeah.
Because then we can say, well, okay, you know, you've done your hard time now. You've done 3 months.
You've seen the worst. It's how I approach new clients as well. I always tell them, just show me the worst. Just straight through the gate. Just show me the worst. Show me the worst that you can throw at me. If I can deal with that, then nothing is unsurmountable. And it's really it's really helpful to speak to the developers as well, as a CTO or just as a leader, or even for myself as a coach. I'm sometimes in this position where the CTO is seeking support in this endeavor, sort of learning how to talk to how to adopt and nurture the sort of influential, and even just selling the idea to the team without having to force it or mandate it. And one of the things I always say, just be honest with them. Don't tell them it's easy. Hey guys, we can do it. It's easy. It's like, no, because they won't believe you. Like they're screaming off the top of their lungs when you're not in the room if you tell them it's easy and we can do this. Because it's very easy to say. You said something very, very, very impactful early on, because you said the seniors are super excited about it, but they sort of understand the risks, and the juniors are not excited about it. Like it's just more work for them. And it's really, really important, I find, to highlight this, to tell them, look, you're excited about this because you understand that you get to do something complex in the infrastructure to make all the domain stuff simpler. And to you, the junior, to you, it looks like more work because now there's more moving pieces and everything seems much more complicated. And both of you are right. And it'll suck for a while, but then we'll get used to it. If you resist it, it'll suck a little bit longer. And if the resistance is there for a good reason, we can adapt to that. But it's really important to be honest with them, to sort of to give them options. If they feel cornered, they're just gonna they're gonna fight back for no reason, not even
100%.
having an intellect, like an articulated notion that they're doing that.
And I mean, I think there are a couple of things at play. I think as a tech industry, so when I speak at conferences, I quite often use an analogy. I always talk about my mum always making me eat my vegetables before I was allowed my dessert. And I say this about AI. I'm working on a bunch of AI projects at the moment, and I'm saying to people, yes, it is amazing, but unless you do some really boring things first, there's a lot of broccoli you have to eat to get your data right, to curate it properly, to cleanse it, to QA it, and so on. But if you do that, you can have your dessert because you'll get the outcome that you're after. And I think, I'm sure you guys have seen this, big code bases where they're importing a huge library with trillions of dependencies in order to do Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion. You sort of say, listen, can we just do that ourselves? And one of the things that horrifies me about a lot of modern software is, how can my little React app consume 200 megabytes of space on my hard? It's 3 pages. And you look at you look at all the, and I appreciate that once I build and so on, it gets smaller and slimmer, but and it's that on demand. I think package managers are great, but they also enable us to get to the dessert buffet table too quickly sometimes.
They promise the wrong things. This is the problem. So you have very valuable packages out there, which are extremely valuable, right? And you have a ton of things you shouldn't install at all. So especially those kinds you just said, right? There are so many things which you actually can implement yourself. And many people, especially, and let's be honest now, especially in the small business area of development, there's just a low chance that you have actually a solid seniority in the team. And so the people are at best, let's say 3, 4, 5 years maybe of experience at all, right? And those kind of people, they simply cannot foresee what will happen when they pull in those packages. They cannot, because they don't have the experience yet to do
and so. The danger is that they might be seniors because they're technically very much experienced, but they might be completely inexperienced in the business domain, or they might be completely inexperienced in leadership, or they might be completely inexperienced in collaborating with this current generation of the team. Sometimes your biggest accelerator is not 20 years of experience with a framework. Your biggest accelerator is 10 years of experience with exactly this team. And to leverage that into 5 years, 10 years of experience in exactly this business, in exactly this niche.
I had this conversation with Brian Finster quite often, that it makes sense to stay for a while in a company and see what results and outcomes will happen because of your decisions or the decisions the team you were part of made. It doesn't make sense to switch company every 6 months just because to get a better pay grade. You will never become a really experienced person because you don't even know that you're making decisions because you never see the results. And
it's like you're a poker player and you're playing 4D chess. You got to stick around until all the boards clear, so that you can see
Exactly, and
what
this,
outcome
I
the
think
result
this is a big problem out there right now, where everyone is about career growth and stuff like that, but no one is really for the long game there. So we grew up in the long game because there was only the long game back then. So there was no job hopping back then. It was a little bit like, hey, you build something and you stick with it for a while, at least several years before you even come to the idea to change something. And today it's a little bit different. Today it's a little bit like, it is so like, hey, what I'm going to do next year, I want to learn a new framework because this is more up to date and I think I can earn more with that. I personally think this is the wrong approach, and this doesn't really make you more valuable. And you will see that by you won't get out of this job hopping cycle, because good experienced leadership persons and managers will see that you actually don't have fundamental experience. You just know how to code in a specific framework, just when working down tickets, writing some functions, writing some components, but not the results, and not why you should, for example, avoid things, why you should avoid packages, why you should use adapter ports and adapter pattern, for example, why you should test. So even testing is something people try to avoid today, to just get faster to the finish line after work, stuff like that.
Yeah, Rule has a great comment. He says, what I usually do is show an example. Use a pull request where technical debt was addressed to show the high coupling, big effort to do so. Now with another proof of concept, we can show how to do the work in a different way. So it's the same. So the locality is maintained. Like the same generation of the team, the same generation of the code base has used a different approach, right? So we're only testing for that one variable. We're doing it this approach, not that approach, and we can see the benefits of it.
And another point is to have a playbook that you always want to address technical debt, at least in very small steps, like continuous refactoring, really saying, hey, I don't like the way we're doing that right now. With a little bit of more effort putting into right now, we can reduce the technical debt over time. That does make sense as well.
Gary,
always be aware of that.
So you mentioned something earlier about you see patterns. And you said you had the experience of having messed this up quite a few times, to then spot those patterns and then to have a sort of pain-driven immune response to say,
pain-driven development.
This is my pain. This is my standard. I'm not going below the standard. I am pushing. If I have to, I'm doing my utmost best to encourage everybody else to be above the standard as well, because I know that it's a universal benefit. And to connect it with Adrian's question, but why is clean code so unpopular? I think it comes from this quantity versus quality discussion, where developers are pressed for quantity. And unfortunately, and I think this clean code and similar. It doesn't have to be clean code. It can be clean code, clean architecture. It can be the whole solid movement, which is also clean code, but it can be any of the more, let's say, schools of design, software design, where there's this approach that it naively gives the developer this sense of brotherhood, the sense of confidence that no, you want quantity? If I focus on quality, the quantity will come. And most people early on in their careers make this mistake. They start communicating like this, but they get burnt, because they're not very good at delivering high quality software at a reasonable pace. When you pick up the book, you might deliver medium quality software at a very slow pace. And that is a very tough sell for somebody who is optimizing quantity, but they will immediately backfire on you and say, hey, quality is really low, what happened? Even though it's not explicit, there is this underlying expectation that no, we just expected it to be high quality. We don't want to ask for it. When I'm hiring you to build the software for me, I'm not telling you to do it low quality. I'm just pushing you for more quantity. That means more quantity at high quality. That doesn't mean that you should be trading. And I think that having that conversation is so important. Having that conversation earnestly is very important. Having that conversation transparently and often is very important. A lot of the most toxic environments that I've experienced, those conversations don't happen. They're just under the table, sort of under the rug, sort of, we're not allowed to mention like that we want to do a feature freeze and write tests, and
And
because that's.
I think there are a
I
couple
think,
of
I
things.
think that's where the fundamental vitriol comes to the sort of confrontational nature of clean code and simulator. What do you think?
There are a lot of pressures at play.
Yeah.
You will always have a CEO or a head of product who wants you to ship feature after feature after feature. And when you say to them, can we allocate some of our budget, on a rolling basis, I like to allocate around about 10% time and effort to refactoring and improving. And I really like to add another 10% to personal development and time off. And inevitably, CEOs will say, well, of course, that's the right thing to do. But then when the quarter looms and so on, they get less interested in making sure that everyone is doing their personal dev time and where. So I think, there is this balance to be struck. And I think one thing where I've had to be sort of fairly kind of directive with people in the past is, again, it's a bit like learning a sport. Writing code that is clean might require you to change your practices and might require you to get used to it. But after you've been doing it for 3 months, it has no impact on your time because you're doing it.
Yeah.
I believe in unit testing, and I believe that there are scenarios where TDD makes perfect sense. But making people slavishly write test after test after test before coding sometimes doesn't help them get to the goal that they're after.
Can you make an example for this distinction? Because this is a big topic every time.
Yeah, we have a lot of TDD conversations, and this comes up often. Like this concept of training, like learning how to do it well, is different from executing well on it.
I'm afraid I don't have an easy 3-point answer at all.
How do you introduce it then? How do you introduce it then, right? So you earnestly tell them, we're gonna do something new, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better, in sort of no uncertain terms.
So the way to slip it in is there will be lots of situations where you're trying to implement business logic, which is potentially very rules table based. And you say, holy moly, there are like 1 million different combinations here. How are you going to debug that? What if we wrote a test harness for this? And they're going, crap, yeah, that would be amazing, because then I just run the test harness and I know. And you just leave it at that. I don't need to tell them what they're doing is now test-driven development. They've just found a way of doing something that makes their life easier and better. And it's when you're driving behavioral change, you can't do it 3 notches at a time. You have to turn the dial 1 notch at a time. Otherwise, you frighten people, or you piss people off. And quite often when we're doing PRs, one of us would say, this would have been more straightforward if we'd started with tests. So, okay, we didn't win it on that time, but maybe we've planted a seed for the next time something comes along that looks like that.
Leandro asks, have you ever had to lay down the law and force your team to do something you wanted them to do?
Yes, but I can honestly say they've never resented it for very long. I think there have been a couple of occasions. So again, people have different styles and approaches to this. I have a tendency to separate back-end from front-end development, partly because I think there are different disciplines and there are different approaches. But what you have to watch out for is that the back-end will get tribal and start blaming the front-end for everything, and the front-end will get tribal and blaming the back-end. So I have had a couple of situations where I've had to sit down with back-end engineers and say, you do need to do documentation because that is your product. Your customer is the front-end team. And if the front-end team does not know how to use your product, then it's a shit product. So I did have to make people grumpy by saying, I'm not going to consider this complete until I see fully proper Swagger documentation. Again, Swagger is my drug of choice. There are other frameworks are available. I appreciate that, but just an open API spec. And the other thing is when they say, well, that's the proper RESTful way to do it. But the front end guys are saying, I wish the interface I wish the API looked a little bit like that. And sometimes you have to be judge and jury, because you don't want to give in to everything the front end asks for. Otherwise, you'd end up with a million API endpoints. But at the same time, you've got to think about their development experience. So, the last time I had to sort of slam my fist on the table was to say to the back end team, you have to think of the front end guys as your customer, and customer satisfaction is part of what you'll be measured on. But 3 weeks down the line, when they realized that actually they weren't having to do loads of iterations with front end, and in fact things were going more smoothly, they said, well, yeah, okay, I'm glad you bullied me into doing that. So,
how do you manage? I don't know how to even phrase this question, but let's say, where this sort of the team is not completely dysfunctional, but it's not high performing. So there are a few individuals who are holding high pillars of standards, and then there's a few, let's say, people who are either intimidated by that or just too overwhelmed to chip in. How do you deal with conflict that arises with, well, if you do it, we do it according to your standard, and if I do it according to my standard? How do you break up these kind of conflicts? Are you there as a mediator, as a tiebreaker? Do you mandate the standard? Like, what do you want? Common denominator, high standard, somewhere in the middle? What is your preferred approach?
So firstly, I don't know whether this is unusual for a CTO, because I was meant to be a more hands-off CTO, so I was on the board and so on, but I attended the stand-ups. And the reason I attended the morning stand-ups was I wanted to take the temperature of the team and get the vibe that was going on. My only contribution was an occasional limerick that I got ChatGPT to write that I would close the stand-up with, just to amuse people.
Were you worried that some people might consider that you're micromanaging by sort of being so present?
Well, I was very careful not to throw my weight around. I was very careful to this is about body language. It's about being there. Listen, I'm a guest in your stand-up. I'm here to shut up and listen. But the thing is, something might come up. We're having trouble because we haven't renewed our license for that framework. Holy crap. I put my hand up, right, I will take that and I will sort it out for you, because that's a ridiculous barrier. So provided they believe you're there to help and not just to be a jackass, I think I think you're very welcome.
I can add something to that. So I'm right now in that situation where we're working with another company, and they have exactly that. So you have the typical 3 stages of developers: the junior ones, the intermediate ones, / pre-senior state, and the senior state. The senior state, you really recognize seniors when you are one yourself. You really recognize them. They are talking with you about every topic. They respond to every topic and stuff like that. And the best thing is to tell them, you are the team. You all are the team. You are one team, and you need to make those decisions. And what you only do is you start to lit some fires here and there to provoke sometimes some people, but then you back off. This is about them. And you will see that those seniors will take the actual role, and suddenly you don't have micromanagement anymore, because micromanagement is always by the top guy, right? So this is the assumption of the people. As long as it's one of them, it's no problem. And you need to make sure that the actual things are then done by them. And you need to leave them a room to take ownership and have responsibility, right? So they need to make the final decisions. You shouldn't do, and this is what I do in mentoring quite often as well, is to tell people you are only there for the framework. You are not there for the final decisions, how it's actually implemented. Especially CTOs or engineering managers who are mainly on strategic and tactical layer, they should not tell how it is implemented on the operational layer. This is the problem of the team. And if you take this away as a problem for them, they lose the ownership in that. So the ownership is about the problem, right? And I wouldn't call it challenge. I would call it problem, because it's a problem to solve. And if they have the ownership for the problem, you need to just make them clear, hey, we have this problem, it's your problem, and I'm here to help. This is what Gary just said. I'm here to take off everything which can be a hurdle for you as a team to solve those. Focus on your problems. Everything which is a outside problem, a tactical or even strategic problem, needs to be removed by the CTO. For example, the team is too small to actually do this. This is a headcount problem. This is a budget and resource problem. This is not the problem of the team. This must be solved by someone who can solve this. And this is not the ownership of the team. Give them enough resources. Give them a expectation of a framework. This is the mission, this is the vision you have as a company, the constraints you have, but leave them enough room that they actually can thrive and make them their problem. And you will be very surprised about the results of that. Actually, it works quite well, I have to say.
Well, yeah, 100%, Adrian. Another analogy I use quite often is my job is just to tell people where the zombies are and make sure they have silver bullets.
Mm-hmm.
I can, that is my job. The zombies are there. I make sure you have the tools that you need to slay the zombies. And we all.
I like that werewolf analogy.
It's very difficult to get any of the image generators to create images of zombies being shot with silver bullets. It always says it's breach style requirements. But to the point about those mixed skills of developers, for my senior developers, there will tend to be two paths for them. Some of my senior developers just want to be very, very hardcore tech contributors. Some do want to lead and nurture teams.
Mm-hmm.
But even those that want to be super hardcore tech contributors, I will call upon them to mentor or bring on junior folk. And to be honest, having a 10x developer who cannot do any of that mentoring or support, I would rather they went somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
For me, junior devs are the senior devs of the future. It's about nurturing them and bringing them on, and you learn a lot about your own practice by doing that, coaching and mentoring with junior devs. Mm-hmm. I actually took on apprentice developers, so very young developers, on a degree apprenticeship. In the UK, we have a degree apprenticeship program where they do a university degree while they're working as an apprentice. And one of the most powerful lessons it taught me was, if you ask a senior developer to go away and do something and they come back and it's rubbish, you can probably give them a hard time because you're entitled to expect a level of work from them. But if you give that job to a junior developer and they come back and it doesn't work, it's not their fault, it's your fault. You haven't explained
it is exactly like that.
Exactly.
I really like that because especially about this topic, I think we have talked much about this one, and I think the one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and this is referring now to the 10x developer, which I personally call to some form of elitism as well. You shouldn't have this as the bar of your team anyway. This is the biggest mistake you can make. This is so hard to replace. It is miles and ages and universes away for junior developers. They can't keep up. So there's a huge gap in your team. Only some people can do the actual work. You need to make sure that the average developer is able to do the main work, and the seniors are more like the cornerstones, the role models, the mentors. Make sure that this process becomes more and more easy, that the technical debt is built down, that refactoring is done, that the process is working, and the junior developers have a clear goal to work towards to, which is the average state and not the 10x state where most developers never come to. This is about having at least 10K of hours in experience. This is where you start to have mastery. 10,000 hours. Who in this audience have 10,000 hours of experience right now?
And when it comes to sort of growing and nurturing teams, there are basically four things that I think about. One, we have to pay our developers. But we don't necessarily have to pay our developers, OpenAI or FANG salaries. But we do have to pay them a decent salary. We have to provide a corporate culture that is welcoming and warm and supportive. Mm-hmm. We have to provide a team that is welcoming and warm and supportive. but also we have to provide them with a sense that in the next 6 months they're going to develop their skills and grow. So, one thing I say to team leaders or the people I report to is, what skills do you want to acquire in the next 6 months? Because I can't pay you as much as I'd like you. So, I want you to feel excited about staying because you're going to grow, because you're going to develop some new skills. Because if that means I have to talk to my AWS account manager and get some free exam passes so that we can encourage people to get AWS certification because that will help them, then I can do that. And so giving people a challenge that is definitely not more than 6 months away. I prefer about 3 months. Say, what can we do in the next 3 months that will add to your skills? Is it picking up a new framework? Is it learning a new aspect of the current framework? Or is it taking some sort of certification or so on? So that, again, if someone feels that they're paid okay, but it's a great place to work and they're really developing, you don't have to pay them as much, frankly, because
It's true. It is so
if you're
true.
having to pay your developers $200,000, you're probably providing quite a sucky experience. If you provided a great experience, you may not have to.
I recently had a conversation with another fellow coach and trainer, and they do exclusive high-level leadership certifications in this part of Europe. I really wanted to know, why do people buy those certifications? The
Leadership
workshops?
certifications.
Yeah, it's in certain methodologies or it's certain specializations regarding some industry standard or ISO certifications or.
This is management.
Gary
This is not
mentioned.
leadership. They're two different things.
I
Leadership
don't want to
is
nitpick. I don't want to nitpick.
Yeah.
The point is, I asked them, why are people paying for this? And they said, well, sometimes they're not getting certified because they need the skill, at least not to the degree, because the certification only checks, minimum standard of the skill, not high competence, right? So it's like the driver's test but it's just like there is no grade for a race car level, right? So it's just minimum competence. And they say, well, most of the time they actually don't need to learn the certification to excel. Most of the time it's other leaders or managers offering the certification as a reward so that the team can feel more fulfilled of, oh, look, we got paid 4K in training this year as a reward. Because it's a text optimized way of getting them, some tangible benefit without, you mentioned earlier, like, I can't pay you as much as I would like to. And I think that's a very, very important sentiment as a business owner. I think anybody who has ever owned a company has felt that way. That anybody who has ever had employees in their own company has felt that way. I wish I could pay you more. Like, I wish I could pay you as much as I would like to. And then they seek other areas of other pillars, other verticals of.
You basically
Reimbursement.
you always have that because there's always the next company. Everyone can see that which is paying more, and this is you always have that. The world is now so large, actually, and so small at the same time, which is new problem
but
since 10 years, right? Where
For
everything
leaders,
is
perhaps,
coming closer together.
But not for junior engineers. Junior engineers now struggle much more than ever in the software industry because we had a lot of layoffs in the past 3 years post-pandemic, and now the market is saturated with people who call themselves senior engineers. So there are no entry-level junior job positions being advertised. Gary mentioned that attitude of, I will give you a task. If you're a senior, I will give you, I'm expecting you to fulfill this. I won't reprimand. I mean, I won't go in and pat your head and say, okay, good job. Now let's improve this. If you're a senior, I expect you to deliver results. And I think recruitment companies and agencies and even hiring managers have that attitude that they would towards a senior when hiring somebody junior. They give them a test, and that's the attitude that they give once they get the code back. It's like, it's not what we expected. You failed the technical assessment. We expected more for this role by. Right, and especially if it's like AI assisted, I see this a lot with some of my clients reach out to me because they want career advice or they might want to change their focus, go from they accidentally got on a management promotion path and they want to steer it a little bit towards staff or to a more technical program or technical product manager at the very least. And I see this a lot happening. I see this reaction happening a lot, where they're just expected to deliver on a certain standard. Nobody has defined it, and they have no peer to talk to. Right? CTOs experience this a lot as well, which is quite ironic because they're the top of the pyramid. Like they don't have any peers, right? So they're only peers, and their only peers that can really help them are the direct competitor, right? Because only that CTO really understands what they're going through.
CTO
And
is a very unique position in a company. So the real CTOs now, I'm not talking about the startup. I am the engineer who's working on weekend as well, a type of engineer, a CTO. I really mean the CTO who's doing the business decisions and try to translate between tech and business and is somehow a product manager as well and those kind of things. Try to keep everything, to glue in the tech-driven company, actually. This is the real CTO. And it's very hard because you don't really know. So there is no like a document somewhere where you can read how it works, because every business domain is different, every team is different. A CTO in an agency is a totally different thing than a CTO in a governmental project, a CTO in a PaaS project, a CTO in a SaaS project. There's so many different factors inside there. In a small company, medium-sized company, scale up, a large enterprise company. In an enterprise company, the CTO is a totally different type of person.
Absolutely.
It is a pure business person. Most of them don't know how code looks like. It is like they're running around on conferences, shaking hands and talking with people about big contracts, something like that. And especially as you said, so the direct competitor, and this is very important. So if you're a CTO, wherever you are, this is the reason why so many CTO groups are there, and they share openly things inside those groups, which is actually a lot of that is under NDA, but they still share it because they try to find ways to get their problem solved. Actually,
if you're the head of eBay, your best buddy to talk to is the head of Stripe, because they're a smaller company, they're a direct competitor, and they've so many differences that just happens to work for them. But they're in the same industry, they have exactly the same problems, they have exactly the same timeline, and there's so much that you can learn from them.
I think informal networks do exist. You know, in the past, working in advisory and consulting, we used to create little networks of enterprise architects and digital transformation leads who were often in competing companies, but everyone was very respectful. Everyone was very grown up about it. We would get together, we would have breakfast, we'd have a coffee, we would talk. And could it be that some things that were theoretically competitively sensitive were shared? Probably, but you know, people tended to be extremely ethical and respectful about how they conducted themselves in those environments. And yeah, so many of the problems we all have are very, very similar. If we could, if we could do some sharing, it's obviously a lot easier in things like the public sector where everyone is in principle working for the same goal. So the chief digital officer in a healthcare trust can get together with the chief digital officer.
You have a wider contract, essentially. Like the scope of your contract as a public service worker extends basically to most government.
I mean, it did sometimes feel a little bit naughty, you know, when you had the head of enterprise architecture from 3 different supermarkets all in the same room talking to each other, and they all felt a little bit kind of taboo. Would they be shouted at if they were seen in the same room together? But you know, and of course they weren't giving away the secret sauce or the secret recipes. They were talking about how to get their Oracle licenses fixed, or and so you know they were sharing really good stuff. But that whole role of the CTO thing is another whole hour-long discussion. And again, something I want to write about, because you know you have this founder CTO, scale up CTO, Series A CTO, Series round B, post IPO conglomerate, and they're all there are some sets of skills that all of them need, but the levels of skills, you know, does a founder CTO need to think about, you know, how to make
which of these flavors have you tried, Gary?
Well, I've done all of them except for the one that I think is really boring, which is the corporate CTO
And
job. So
enterprise CTO.
I've been
Chief
engineer number
information,
one.
the chief information, the CIO essentially,
Yeah.
not the.
So I've been engineer number one.
Yeah.
And grown that through funding. And
Mhm.
I've been a CTO in a fairly mature 25-person team, taking it through 2 rounds of funding. And I enjoy both, but they are different roles, completely different roles. The second role, is much more about, tedious. Well, very few founding engineers are excited about getting job descriptions right. Then there very few people are
Very wishy-washy.
excited about having proper salary bandings and gradings and doing
Yeah,
appraisals.
HR is not as prominent in those smaller companies that are, especially at low funding companies, right?
Yeah.
So there isn't as much discipline, craft, if I call it that, in the people management legalities, at least in the legal department.
So as you grow, plainly that balance between your ability to be hands-on and be reviewing PRs and so on, does decline.
So
I would say that you need to be credible. You do need to have a background in tech. You do need to know when, if I ever get to the point where I'm not entirely sure whether one of my senior tech folk is bullshitting me, then that's probably the time I should stop being a CTO. Because
you need to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
This is what I meant. So as a real pro in tech, you recognize other pros, aka seniors in this case. So let's say the seasoned, experienced person who actually make those decisions in the lower level, in the higher levels, those kind of people, they need to be the cornerstones and they need to trust each other. So it is totally so if you as a CTO, you aren't able to be the glue between the actual CEO and the developers, that's oftentimes the case. So basically the pure business persons, the salespeople, something like that, then you can't translate that. If you don't understand the tech people, you can't translate them. On the other hand, you can't sell them anything if you don't translate them, if you aren't able to understand them. And I think this is very important. The higher you get in this chain, the less this is a thing of importance, because the more hierarchical layers in between you and the actual developers are. There you have then on some point the engineering manager, the VPE, several managers, principal engineers are there then on some point, and then it actually fades a little bit, so it's not that important anymore. But everything which is actually a SMB still, right, let's say a small company, maybe a scale up, there you actually need to know exactly what's going on in your tech. And you need to define the boundaries. You need to define the rough way. It is not like, hey, team, just do what you want. You want to build a product. Let's go. So this is not what you should do. Then otherwise, you need to define some framework which helps the team, because the team doesn't know what is the mission, what is the vision. You need to basically constantly do storytelling to give them the current idea where we are, where we need to go, what is the next chapter, what are the next chapters, and the overall idea. And then they can try to add as much as possible to this journey right now. And this is what you do. So I call it often storytelling, because this is what you do most of the day. So you tell the big story where you are, you talk about basically about being heroes and stuff like that. And this is very important, because for a moment, imagine that you are just a developer in a company of 20, 30, 40 people, and there is a CEO with some salespeople sitting in a hidden room somewhere and defining all the strategy, all the interesting stuff actually. And you as a developer just have a ticket board. This is all you see. This is not good. And if you need to bridge this gap, and the CTO is the person who is connected or has access to this room and has access to all the developers and knows what an IDE is. And this is the actual value of a CTO, to glue this together, right? Awesome. Without a CTO, you don't have a chance to get anywhere. And oftentimes the CEOs are actually CTOs, because you oftentimes have only one person and they switch roles, for example. And you can have both at the same time. So the CTO can be a CEO at the same time if the company is not large enough. It's possible, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes in the smaller organizations, you don't really have a CTO who would be equal in the C-suite with the CEO, but you have a head of engineering who then works with or reports to the CEO, right? So it's this. This is
one of the biggest issues. This is one of the biggest issues of small companies.
One person is strategic, and then the other person is just the head of department of engineering, and it's already being optimized as a cost center. It's already being optimized as it has to be a silo because nobody understands you.
I don't like the idea to degrade the CTO to an engineering manager, because this is not the role of the CTO.
Yeah.
The CTO must be a person who is on this C-level where people are liable regarding the actual mission. So if you have stakes and have, let's say, accountability to actually get everything right, and you participate on getting things right, the business idea behind that, you will be actually doing the things, let's say, what others sometimes call to do the impossible, right? Things you cannot imagine right now. This is what you need to do, this creative part of the software development process. So what the why? Right? The engineering manager is not caring about the why. The engineering manager is expecting a why to actually realize that with the tech team. But the CTO is a different thing. It is above this layer to actually figure out what the why actually is, and then translate it down and help others to realize that. I think this is the big difference, and why so many companies don't really fly in the small business area, because the CTOs are not really doing business. They are just doing tech.
No, and
Just doing
I think this is an area where VC firms are missing a huge trick, because I think those small 5, 6, even 20-person companies cannot necessarily afford the CTO that you're describing, Adrian.
Exactly.
But if VC firms could provide fractional CTOs to support with that, because they may well have really great founding engineers, heads of engineering, who are great at, implementing the brilliant development practice, the great architecture and so on, which is, the basis of a solid tech product. But what they need is support in that more visionary stuff and that glue component, which is, why is what I'm doing important? How does what I'm doing move this business forward? And being able to provide, whether it's coaching or mentoring or just fractional CTO, because I think it's probably fair to say there are a lot of small companies that have CTOs who are basically heads of engineering, and that is great.
It's better than not.
They do a brilliant job, but as you say, it's particularly if you're trying to get past Series A funding, the CTO needs to be much more engaged around.
Yeah, they need to be competent when they leave the silo, right? So they have to be able to express the business strategy behind the tech decisions. And if they've never experienced that, then all they can do is, well, here's our roadmap, and here's our features, and here's how we're gonna do it. And it's just it's too tactical, like it's too close to the sausage factory, and it doesn't really speak about markets and strategy and opening up new regions and new targets. Sorry, I don't want to.
The CTO should the CTO just for my understanding. So because I'm in that role for quite a long time, I'm an entrepreneurial CTO myself. So I was never an employed one. That's interesting to say there, and I know that the best decisions.
You're a founder CTO.
I'm a founder CTO actually 2 times. And the point is, when you don't find yourself regularly arguing with the other C-suite about the better way to reach the goal, you're actually not a CTO. And this is this is my simple definition. If you are not allowed, exactly. So if you have a personal interest that this is going to fly, and you wake up in the morning, you have this new idea, and your task for today is not to convince the developers, it's you're going to fight the other opinions of the CEO, CFO, or whoever is with you in charge there. You are going to challenge this and try to find out what's the better hypothesis in that moment. And this is then the actual doing. And when you have done this, you are going fully motivated, and then you are the big storyteller who is the actual leader, so not the manager, the leader of the tech team, and telling everyone we are going into that direction, this is our journey, and we're doing that together now. Because then you are convinced, you have already stakes at that. And those are the those are the people who actually make this component. You need to have several components in a company. You need to have the business ideas, you need to have the tech, and you need to the C-suite was created to fill those, or the idea of that, to actually have those pillars defined, because they are, let's say, very common things. And the CTO, exactly, the technical person.
The C-suite is a form of governance. It's there so that no one person could fuck up something by having too much absolute power, right? So
yeah, and not a single person is able to see this future easily.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Those are very few people on this planet who are actually capable of doing that.
We speak with a lot of tech leaders who call themselves CTOs or don't, but they ended up in the CTO role somehow, and we coached them. And we also had other coaches on. We had Stefan Schmidt on a few weeks ago. Great conversation. I think part of the I firmly believe that part of the hero's journey on the maturity arc, the sort of coming of age step for every founding engineer or CTO or CTO to be, is going to their C-suite and casting their vote and using their influence rather than reporting. That change in mindset is so crucial, especially if the vertical of their organization stretches as they're going through funding rounds. Mm-hmm. It is so crucial that they start casting their vote and challenging ideas and using their influence to get the other C-suite on board, especially if you have like a pedantic CFO, or if you have somebody who got hired in later from marketing and the conversations are too dominated towards one direction, where in marketing there's no product discussions. Marketing is leading all of the feature requests, technical decisions. The CTO is reporting to the CFO. It's just, cloud ops takes up most of your OpEx, and then, and like there's that
CTO and CFO hate each other.
Yeah, yes.
One is the visionary, and the other one is a pedantic person.
Yes, and then you degrade each other into these like these like dependency pipelines of, okay, well, I'm controlling the budget. You have the biggest minus, you have the biggest plus, right? And that's usually the tech team as a cost center and marketing team as the commission-based superheroes in the company, and it just creates so much dysfunction, so much cultural dysfunction, so much stigma, so much even adversarial subcultures within the organization that then form silos around it. It's a complete disconnect. And then you have an offsite, then everybody sort of, everybody takes off their titles and they, I don't know, do some activities together and they bond for the first time. But sometimes such activities don't happen until the first year, first 3 years in a company. And by that time it's too late, because then you bond on the offsite, and then you come back to the office and you go back to your silo, and then you just lose some of that bond, because the environment and the peer group is just so entrenched that it takes a lot of nurture. It takes somebody like Gary to go on that 18-month journey with you to actually say, okay, we're going to gently now seek your opinion about what we're going to do differently. But we can all agree that there needs to be change. Otherwise, this is the last iteration.
Okay, we have 10 more minutes. Actually, we are 20 minutes over, but we have 10 more minutes for the old schedule. And that was a hot, long join, I would say. And I hope this wasn't the last appearance of you, Gary, on this show. I think it would be interesting to go deep dive into this topic again, or some similar topic.
I was totally not expecting this, and I really enjoyed it. So no, I'd be absolutely delighted if you want me on again.
We would love to. Gary, there were a few questions we didn't get to, and some of them addressed you directly. I would just like to, if somebody wants to DM you and have a little bit of a conversation with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. My Thinkivation, if I put it in the comments box, no, I can't connect my. So no, if I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm on all social media. I'm Thinkivation.
Thinkivation. Gary Barnett. Thinkivation. Okay, I'll find it and drop it in the show notes.
Oh, that's
awesome. So if you have any questions that we didn't get to Gary, please post them. Gary, I do have a question to you, though, because I do believe you offered Maybe
Yeah,
if you
you're
want.
allowed. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
One of the first questions that we haven't addressed yet is actually one of your own. If you don't mind us playing a little bit of, because that you asked the question when you weren't on the hot seat yet. So you asked, I'm bothered by clean code as an ideology. Of course, it should be a practice. We should support it with coding standards, but I worry a little about it as a movement. What is this worry about?
Well, so I think, and I don't want to get too philosophical or navel gazing about this, but I have this thing about ideology generally. I believe that too much ideology makes you stupid, and
Yeah.
this is true of politics, of your position on science, your position on things. So I'm always very, very resistant to people who say this is the one way to do things. If you're not doing it this way, it's because you're rubbish, or you're just not as clever as me, or whatever the implication is. And I've had to learn over the years to not let my irritation at those statements blind me to the fact that there is probably some truth to what they're saying. So and it's very interesting because of the tech community I'm in at the moment is Golang. And Golang is a very interesting programming language because it is very opinionated.
Very.
And there is very much an idiomatic way to write Go. And you can do the sniff test on Go really easily, and you can tell whether Go code is idiomatically correct versus not quite so correct. And on one hand, I hated that. But on the other hand, I love it now.
It creates a sense of tribalism that isn't toxic. You can just, those people who stop resisting that, they are just then creating similar code in a similar ecosystem, which creates a higher standard for everybody.
Absolutely. And the same is true, of Kent Beck's Extreme Programming book. I read it and I thought, no, this would not work for me or my team. And I then had to get my head around the fact that I didn't need to do it exactly the way he had described.
Correct. Yes.
But that there were some really awesome ideas and approaches embedded within that work.
And this is so true for everything: clean code, clean architecture, TDD 100%. Even. And you mentioned Agile too. Agile 2 is this sort of iteration on the Agile manifesto of, hey, it's a bit outdated.
But it's also a kind of attempt to reinforce the idea that please turn your common sense to maximum before you start doing Agile. Don't just slavishly do, rituals A through B. Don't go to Atlassian and fill in every single box and use every single tool that Atlassian gives you to do Agile, because it may not.
The less agile you become, actually.
Oh my God.
And besides, there isn't enough time in the day to do that.
The amount of leaders that come to me for coaching and tell me they use the Agile board on I mean, bless them. They're the best client, but usually it's this idea of, are we doing Kanban or are we doing Agile? And they tell me, oh, we're doing Scrum with the Agile board in Jira, and I'm like, I just feel that tinge of pain, because I know, okay, we're gonna have to do the hard thing here and probably get away from this, and they'll probably be very resistant to it because their management probably loves it for the consistency and the predictability of their data management of just what data they ingest into project management. But it doesn't deliver the product faster, and they might be building the wrong product, and they might be neglecting quality, and they might be introducing a lot of technical debt, and it's not visible, right? So the thing they're so proud of then doesn't tell them the really important answers about their process.
And so it's that, keep your eyes open, be open-minded when someone talks to you about clean code, and again, it's the classic, I know that functions shouldn't be more than pick your number lines long.
Yeah.
But sometimes a function needs to be 200 lines long, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
And even that is so important because there's a lot of, let's say, dogma in TDD and clean code especially, and these are the two that I know the most where people hate it. People don't do TDD. They don't do the 4 steps. They do test implementation, test implementation, test implementation, test implementation, test implementation. And even Kent Beck himself said that one of the biggest failures was that he failed to communicate that thinking about the business idea and thinking about what the customer wants, that's the most important part of TDD. And then you write a test, and then you hack it together, and then the second most important step is doing the refactor. If you've invested most of your available allotted time to step 2 and step 3, which is test and implementation, you're wasting your time because you haven't thought enough about the problem and you don't have enough time to refactor the design. So what you'll end up with is a shitty artifact that barely gets the job done, and your other peers who don't do TDD will ridicule you for it. And then people say, "Oh, I did the fun parts and it's not working for me. It's probably crap." But at the same time, a lot of books have given up on teaching you this and saying, "Look, it is crap if you're not doing it this way." And they just say, "Oh, it's not crap. It's just, we just remove the things that are unpopular and now we're selling it in a different package." And then that actually then is crap without actually being transparent about it. And then people get confused about, okay, which one are you doing? Are you doing the one that comes with the certification? Or are you doing the one that comes from the book? Or are you doing the one that came with 40 years of experience and making mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you doing Greek Orthodox TDD or Russian Orthodox TDD?
Yes.
And because if you're doing Greek Orthodox, I have to hate you for it. And and it's
Same thing with solid and clean code. Uncle Bob explicitly said the reason he wants his functions to be small is because there was probably a mistake in design, and he wants to have small pieces, because if then the refactors get harder as you make things smaller, that's a sign that they're not pieced together correctly. You go super small. So you go super small for the sole reason of reconfiguring it back together, of inlining the code back without the function, but in a different configuration, so you get higher cohesion.
Have you ever tried to play with Lego bricks which are actually glued together? It is actually, you don't refactor those because you can't move them. And this is the problem with large functions, large classes, pages-long components in React or something like that, where everything is so glued together, so interwoven, that you actually cannot do anything with it anymore. And if you put that or, split that into very small pieces, you can rearrange them, you can reuse them, and then you actually start to play with those things and get the idea. Otherwise, you don't get the idea because you don't start, because the hurdle is too big, because the function needs to be disassembled before you can actually work with it. And this is actually the real idea behind that, which most people don't get, because they see, more effort, more file size,
more naming,
longer build times, something
longer
like
function
that.
names. Yeah.
I have 3 seconds more build time. I can't do that, right? And it's like, well,
I was the kind of kid that separated his Legos out by color. So all of my red bricks were the red bricks, and all the yellow bricks were over there.
Well, Dennis, that is because you're not a savage. And that is I think that is
man of culture. Nice to meet you, Gary.
You're absolutely right.
we judge by Lego behavior.
I have seen plenty of behemoth functions and modules that desperately cried out. But there is this sort of Russian doll component, and you definitely see it in React, where if you're using a component that contains some components that are themselves composed out of components, eventually my brain is not big enough to deal with a Russian doll problem. But of course, actually, if I'm using someone else's component, I'm using a black box, and there's should it bother me how that's composed, because I'm just seeing an interface.
What should bother you is how much glue code you need to compose together out of somebody else's glue pieces to use the freaking black box. The black box is fine if I can easily interface with it. But if the interface requires glue, then I am creating a gray box that I don't really understand because I have to copy-paste glue code together. It's this idea of, hey, the framework is really simple. Here, please spend 10 days learning all of the various ways you can configure the framework so it can freaking run on your use case. Right, so yes, there's no code being written, but I have to learn the freaking XML of the config file to be able to make it do, I don't know, RPC.
The definition of framework is software that isn't finished. I mean, that's kind of the intrinsic definition of what a framework is.
Yeah. Okay, this was great. Thank you so much for sort of course correcting and helping us out in a bind.
No, honestly, I've really enjoyed this. It's been a really pleasant surprise. So
And thank you for being so open-minded to consider jumping up on us and
no, crazy,
to
no,
trust
it's
us.
awesome. I'll do it again. So yeah, no, come and find me, Dennis and Adrian, and yeah, if anyone else wants to ping me, then they're totally welcome to. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us, Gary.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Good.
Gary, I'll take you off stage. There we go. Adrian, outro. How did you enjoy
Outro.
today's chaotic episode?
Concerning in the beginning, but we will move it for the audience. The original topic was with Maria, talking
More
about
tactical
how to fix,
talk with Maria. Yeah.
maybe even operational.
Yeah.
I would say operational, not technical. The technical aspect is that we want to fix a code base in order to fulfill a strategy, but it's the operational how we actually do that.
Refactoring. Yeah.
We will announce when we move it. Actually, we moved it already to today. We will get that. We will get that one. We will. Right?
Work in progress.
Otherwise, this episode was interesting. We should do more hot joins, I think.
Yeah.
We were discussing today that we need to think about our theme of our tech journey stream, because we are jumping sometimes a little bit between themes. Sometimes we are the hands-on showing React code, and then we're talking about how to run a business. It's a little bit like very broad, and maybe interesting for some people, but sometimes hard to follow for others, because they are there in a React session. Next time they come and we are talking about CEO versus CTO, which is on the other hand, on the spectrum end, right? Interesting for us both, maybe for some, but we need to refine that a little bit, I think. Happy to have your feedback, by the way. We're loving feedback from you guys. That's it. So I think it was
Best place for feedback is on the YouTube comments, LinkedIn comments, or DM us directly on LinkedIn. That's how you get our attention the fastest.
And you get content basically daily from us. So if you like to see more of that, just follow us on LinkedIn daily. Daily videos, daily posts. We are very active right now, I think.
Adrian has been very diligent regarding upgrading his production quality for YouTube videos, short clips, vertical clips, giving you a lot of entertainment and education. And I've been writing a lot. I've been ghost writing for a few publications. I'm also involved with the Grow CTO community now, which is building engineering intelligence platforms, so a tool to sort of help you make grown-up decisions about your engineering strategy. And I've been changing my strategy and how I write on Substack. Crafting Tech Teams is my Substack, and Stackable CTO is Adrian's Substack. That's the subtitles in our names to sort of help us sort of brand ourselves, to enrich our public writing and our thought dumps and brain dumps into a more approachable brand, so that you can find us there regarding engineering culture topics. Yeah. And if you
I actually moved a little bit, I have to say, from article writing, which I've done quite a lot, to
videos.
To videos. Somehow, videos is yeah, we noticed. Yeah,
we noticed.
I just we have 18. So just right now, a new video on my new YouTube channel was just released.
Okay, so we need to stop, and we can continue the discussion in that new video that you just posted. So let us know what you all think.
But this is not I know what you mean right now.
Yes,
okay.
Let's go over to that post and continue the discussion in that comment thread on LinkedIn. What is the video?
No, not this is YouTube. Not
YouTube.
Not.
YouTube. Scheduled video on YouTube. Wow. Okay, yeah. I misunderstood.
Yeah. So I just it's not a premiere, but it's there. I just show it right now. I need to.
You show it.
This is quite funny because I'm laughing a little bit there about people who doing things wrong.
And then we close up for tonight.
That one, I'm looking sad in the moment, but it It was a premiere. Huh? Okay, never mind. Take a look at the video yourself next time. Yeah, what can you expect? So we have every Wednesday a next one. So, so to say.
We have a plan. So right now we have a plan. Yes.
Oh, we have a
plan. We have a plan.
We have a plan.
It's 'cause
That's
we're
so
grown-ups.
new. I'm
It's
getting
so
used.
new.
I need to
Yes,
get used
we have
to.
a plan. So, next Wednesday is avoid pull requests and synchronize code
Ah,
reviews.
favorite topic. Favorite
Yes,
topic.
so we get to talk about the unintuitive, controversial opinions about how to do pull requests and how to not do them and what you can do differently. And this time we're gonna stay on topic, and it's just gonna be about pull requests and code reviews. We'll try to stay away from the broader continuous delivery and testing discussions.
We
And we'll
try.
just focus. And we'll just focus. We'll try, and we'll just focus on that one topic as a commitment. July 3rd, we'll be refactoring React components live on stream. So we're sort of doing that. We're gonna help you find code smells, specifically when it comes to making things more testable or misusing hooks, or we'll learn something new and maybe we'll have a guest on who'll help us do that, or maybe we'll react to a React video on YouTube where that is quite that is quite a fun way of engaging with live coding sessions. And July 10th, we have Sander Hugendorn joining us, and he'll be discussing one of his topics that he's been presenting a lot on his keynotes. He's quite a prominent speaker in the tech space in Europe, and we will be continuing on today's theme actually. And his topic that he'll be discussing with us is this idea of getting unstuck, basically how to deal with an organization that has way too much friction or technical debt, and sort of how to get out of that bind and get moving again without conforming too much to those certified agile anti-patterns or reverting to waterfall, etc. Basically, how to get unstuck, how to get your finesse back, how to get your agility back, how to get your elan and your energy back as a small team and as a growing business.
Is elan an English word?
I think so. Is it not? I think everybody understands elan. No, I mean, it's elan in Slovenian, and I know elan is not a Slovenian word, and it's elan in
It's
German.
a German word.
Is it a German word?
It is. This is the reason
No,
why
it's
I'm
not a
asking.
German word.
It is.
Okay, I'll do my research. I don't want to argue on something I don't fully understand.
Okay, it seems to be the same. Deep L tells me.
Thank you so much for the active commenters, Gary prominently for.
No, there
being
were many
invited
more,
on.
like
But also
Leandro,
yes, Leandro,
Raul,
Maybe
Neva,
I saw your comments, but
Isan.
we went super far away from that topic, so I'm sorry. We might readdress it in the topics in the comments. We had Meba, we had Leandro, Ehsan, thank you, Kaloyan. Yeah, and I believe I missed a comment from Thomas, one of our regulars. I'm very sorry, Thomas. I'll promise I'll DM you and or at least connect with Gary and continue the conversation. If nothing else, we love matchmaking thought leaders and people with questions, and in a way that was also how we started off today's session with Maria about, most of the thought leaders in the industry are approachable if you do your homework. Gary did his homework, we did our homework, and you saw how natural it was for three strangers to connect and have a very inspirational conversation.
Be a professional person, and being professional means to take responsibility, embrace ownership, make sure that you don't harm others, make sure if you work with somebody you are not a burden, right? And to be that, you need to play the long game, because you can't do that just in some years. So it is totally unrealistic after 2 or 3 years of thinking, hey, I've learned already everything. So if you really think that in that moment, this is the typical what people refer to Dunning-Kruger. We all had that, because we have problems to understand our own skills in that moment. Mm-hmm. We think we can create things, and now we are on it. In reality, we are years ahead, in distance from that. And even then, on some point, what is that? What others, see in others, or let's say why seniors recognize seniors, is that they start to become more humble, and they start to be more like okay, I won't run into the same problem again, and I have simply more respect, or let's say about the challenge. Actually, it's about the challenge.
You know what? But you know how the humility manifests in everyday life? To me, the most humbling aspect of humility itself is that any challenge that I now see is basically just, okay, that's a challenge worth solving, and I know I can't do it alone. Like, there's no point. I'm not even going to try doing it alone. From the get-go, I will think about it strategic. I'm definitely not doing the tactics alone and trying to scale that, because I need to work on the problem, on the business, on the strategy. I can't just get distracted with execution. And then to start from that place, okay, I can't do it alone. Is it viable? Could I pay people? Gary even said, this idea of, as a business owner having employees, you'll always have that tinge of, I can't pay you as much as I would like to. And then to have a product that says, oh, but maybe if we do this, I can get there. To have that dream, to have that vision, to have that at least uplifting.
What drives you? The question, what drives you?
The drive, exactly.
And we all should have this drive. So I had that quite often in mentorships where people ask me, hey, maybe on some point in time I want to do my own product. I want to become entrepreneurial ways or something like that. And I always tell the people, if you really want to do this and your origin is tech, then master tech first, and then step by step go into the business part. So if you don't have a business connection yet, because otherwise you wouldn't have asked this question, you really need to understand that your business then is based on your technical skills. So only if you have mastered your technical skills, you can focus on the business vision and stuff like that. So you can't do both at the same time. It's simply too much. Believe me, it is too much. Even as an experienced person, it can so quickly overwhelm you to run a business, to have employees, to have family, to have so many challenges. It's
and the
hard.
sad thing is that you actually, technically, you could do it alone, but it would require huge sacrifice on your mental stability. Work-life balance.
I would even disagree on that. For a very small pet peeve project, maybe, but not for a real project, because
long-term unsustainable. You'll get used to it, you'll get addicted to that, and then you won't be able to stop, and it'll just ruin your relationships.
I never saw a product created by a single person, right? A very single person, in a short amount of time, which was actually good. I never saw that. I know products long term, like StreamYard, for example. We are using that right now. I was just about to say. Games like RimWorld, for example, is a single person production, and it's basically one of the best selling things on Steam, for example. Those kind of things, yes, but those are very rare examples, and we should not mistake in here to think, hey, I can do that as well.
StreamYard was acquired twice already, right? So the person who built it is long gone.
Because you want to scale those kind of things. And the point is, it is extremely exhausting to try this. You will face so many challenges. You will face yourself, your inner resistance, in a way you never faced it before. And it is very likely that you step too far into the game that you cannot really return anymore. And it is always good if you start an endeavor, first of all, to not do that alone. Especially, so if you have a lot of money, something like that, you're a investor, it's maybe a difference because you have more, let's say, possibilities and capabilities.
But it's no guarantee.
It's no guarantee either, but
I think even
it's not burning you out in that way. Yeah.
Fair.
And I don't mean now 2,000 or something, 200,000. I really mean you have enough budget to really drive something. And but most of the people we have on LinkedIn, we have in our communities, they are actually quite small companies, very small people. Not very small people, that was a bad term, but very small companies and very small teams working on very personal visions. It's not like when you take something like Dan Mattel, where he's really talking about the 3 major steps of an entrepreneur, right? Being the person who's trade money for money. time for money, and then you start to delegate things, and then you trade money for money. And this money for money thing is very, 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 very far away. And most entrepreneurs never reach that level. Not very realistically now. You reach that delegation level quite early on. But the problem with what many of those systems tell you is that it treats like, hey, there is a hard break between all those steps. It isn't. Especially in the first two, it isn't. You are delegating while doing all day long yourself this work. This is where most entrepreneurs I personally know are right now. And this is the heavy part, especially when you are alone. And you should be very careful about this, because at some point you need to have someone who can do your work. Just imagine you're a single person who is able to create a fully fledged software. Please, think about that. In the moment you try to disconnect from this and employ someone to take over, good luck finding such a person without money in place right now. This is near to impossible. So you basically create a silo from day one, and this is the biggest problem you have. You are the biggest dependency of this company. You're doing everything in the company, and this will most likely destroy you. And this is the reason why you should not try to do that, because you have the power. Many people have this power, this willpower, right? To stand up in the morning and follow the why, follow the vision. I know that very exactly. So I've bled that myself already. This is a very hard way to go. And most people don't follow through in this way. This is so hard that I would recommend to think, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you are alone, start with being solopreneur. Start with being freelancer. Feel like it is when you are actually not getting a salary from someone, that you need to make it every day, and no one asks you if you want to have free time, vacation, or something like that.
Very powerful, but also very challenging.
Exactly, especially when you have family. Don't get to the point when you have family and tell the family, I make you rich, I'm becoming self-employed right now, I'm looking for an idea. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. This is not what you should do to your family. Your family will not see you in the next 3 years, and you promise that for them, but in reality you do it for yourself, because you yourself want to do this in that moment, and you give a shit about your family in that moment, and you shouldn't do this. This is very hard, even if you are already some steps ahead of that. And try to be solopreneur. It is so easy today. If you would be able, if you think you would be able to become a person who's earning money by yourself, creating business, then start with solopreneurship. Prove it there, and then you can still up-level this. There are so many examples on LinkedIn, like Oshri Cohen. Most people know Oshri Cohen.
FCTO.
And now he's an agency company.
To feed into exactly that need that Gary described, is that most small companies where there's that disconnect between CEO and head of engineering simply can't afford a CTO, or they just have too much relationship cloud between those two roles, and they need an external person to come in and try to reestablish a different kind of relationship. And also, if you're an engineer and you came here thinking that this is going to be about solid principles and clean coding, well, if you think the quality of your coding will make more money or will drive more value to your customer, it's really important that you understand what the real equation there is. You need to understand what the economics of the quality of your code are. Because a lot of people think they just do solid and clean code and TDD, and they just go freaking all in on all these principles. And the quality they produce might be a little bit better or just immeasurably different. But the customer suffers. And you think what they wanted, what they asked for, is lower quality software. If you want to be a solopreneur, think about it that way. You need to ask yourself, how is this quality going to impact value to the customer, value to the business, value to the stakeholders?
And is it holding you back? So there are people like Theo on YouTube, who is a little like let's say,
Adrian,
more dynamic.
Maybe this topic for next time, and we wrap now, and we keep it chill.
Maybe. Okay, I'm stopping. Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's wrap it. Yeah. Actually, we already wrapped up, I think, 2 times. But anyway, We
Thanks
see
for
us
being with
then
us.
on next Wednesday. We have next Wednesday our favorite topic, so the topic where we actually started with the entire show, which is avoiding code reviews, and why synchronous reviews are actually better, or we think it is. I'd see you then. Let's call it a day then. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. This is what we're here for.
Yeah.
And yeah, see you next time then. See you around. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Let's wrap up then.
I'm gonna play some lovely music. And ciao.